So if you're in retail roof sales, I want to give you a piece of advice that's going to hammer home your presentation by the time you get to the table. And I call it the worst case scenario story. So something that I will do when I'm in front of the homeowner is either explain a worst case scenario, and this is earlier on in the conversation so I can bring it up later at the table. But I will either tell a story, a recent story. For example, I'll say, maybe I'm looking underneath the shingles and I'll say, hey, the last installer looked like they did a decent job installing this. The shingles do look old. Or I might say, it looks like the previous installer, missed some things here. And that'll lead me into the transition of a worst case scenario story. I'll say, that reminds me, we actually recently had to replace a roof that was replaced only a year ago. We went out and inspected it because the homeowner was experiencing some leaks. They tried to call the company who had installed it before, but they didn't answer the phone because they went out of business. And also, the company never put a warranty on their roof. And so they had no recourse. The homeowner ended up calling us to come out to look at it to see if we could repair it. But what ended up happening was it was so bad that we had to replace the entire roof. And they ended up having to pay for the roof twice. So the reason I would tell that story is because later on in my presentation, I'm going to drive home every aspect of that story to turn it around to a positive so that we help them avoid that from ever happening, right? And so all those attributes of that story, I'm going to flip those upside down and say, look, our priority is quality for you. And that's why we have a project manager on site who's going to take photos before, during, and after. You're going to get a photo album of those photos when we're all done. We put a X amount of years workmanship warranty on your roof through the manufacturer. What that means is, in the case that we were to ever go out of business, remember that story I told you earlier? In the case that we were to ever go out of business, you are still warranted up to X amount of years, right? So I'm going to, again, flip everything from that previous story on its head, and I'm going to nail home that protection, because once you paint the worst case scenario story, you're able to provide them with the valuable options. You're essentially creating a deficit in their mind and then filling it up with the positives on the other side. So anyways, you can use this. You don't have to tell a story necessarily or make up a story, but, and especially if you have a real story, tell that story, right? To help create a contrast or a deficit and then show the positives on the other side. Or you can say, hey, worst case for most people, this is what this looks like. Worst case for homeowners is that they get a roof installed, the first rain, they're gonna see leaks, they call the company doesn't answer because they went out of business, and then they have no warranty on the roof and no recourse, and they're having to pay for a roof twice. We see this all the time. We don't want that to happen to you, so here's what we do, right? Anyways, see ya.